Welcome to Paranormal or Reality. On today's video, we examine 4 ghosty encounters. We have started a new podcast that combines multiple videos. If you prefer listening to longer videos, the link will be in the description. Now let's begin. At the end of May 1987, while my parents were on vacation, I was taking care of the haunted house I had lived in from 1979 till 1985. By this time, the poltergeist activity had decreased to almost nothing, but I was still scared to be in the house alone, especially at night. I called a friend of mine to ask him if he would mind staying with me when my parents were gone. I had told him quite a few stories about the activity in that house and the barn in the past, so I used the possibility of a paranormal encounter to lure him into staying. Fortunately for him, had never experienced anything he would consider paranormal before, but was still interested and not skeptical. So he agreed to stay that night. While I was waiting for him to arrive, my brother called to see if I was going to be staying there that night so he could hang out with his friends. I confirmed that I was. Also told him I was having my friend over to possibly have his first paranormal experience. My brother thought that was a good idea, so he decided to mention that to his friends to see if they wanted to join us for an experience of their own. One of his friends had a Ouija board and thought that was a great place to try it out, so they agreed. My brother arrived with his 2 friends first. Then we walked around outside, telling them about experiences we had there and in the barn. One of his friends was a skeptic, so he wasn't believing anything my brother and I were talking about. The other was like my friend. He hadn't experienced anything in his life, but still had an open mind. While we were talking, my friend finally arrived, so I went to his car to greet him. He had his girlfriend with him, so I asked if he was still planning on staying the night. He said yes, as long as his girlfriend could stay as well. I didn't mind as long as she was aware of my reason for having him stay. I told her that strange things may happen that might be scary to someone who has never had those experiences before. She was also a skeptic, so she agreed to stay, saying nothing was going to happen anyway. While my brother and his friends were still outside, I took my friend and his girlfriend upstairs to show him where they could sleep. After showing them, I started telling stories about the house to prepare them for what could possibly happen during the night. The only thing I was expecting would happen was the attic door would shake and make noises like it had done almost every night while I was living there. We went into the attic so I could show them what was in there, while still talking about past experiences in the house and barn. There was a stack of old encyclopedias on the floor that was in disarray with one on the floor. I picked up the one from the floor and placed it on top of the stack, then straightened up the stack while finishing my stories of past experiences. Afterward, I went back downstairs to see what my brother was doing. My friend stayed upstairs with his girlfriend so they could be alone. When I got downstairs, I saw that they had already set up the Ouija board on the table, even had a few candles around it. The table was in the dining room at the bottom of the stairs. I closed the stairway door and sat down in the empty chair in front of me, facing away from the door. My brother and his 2 friends were already sitting in the other chairs. We lit the candles, put our fingers on the planchette, and began asking questions. The planchette was moving with all our hands on it, answering our questions. I wasn't moving it, but I did think someone in our group was. I didn't believe Ouija boards were anything more than a novelty. While playing with the board, we heard someone walking on the stairs, which caused all 4 of us to look at the stairway door. I didn't think anything of it since my friend and his girlfriend were still upstairs. I just figured they were coming down. But after a little time, he hadn't opened the door. So I opened the door and saw he wasn't there. I then went up to ask him if he had gone down the stairs. He told me that him or his girlfriend hadn't moved from the couch they were sitting on. He told me that he thought one of us was coming upstairs because they heard it also. 6 people heard someone walking on the stairs when there was no one on the stairs. My brother's skeptical friend was getting really spooked after that. We had to convince him not to just leave. His other friend was intrigued, like it was the coolest thing he'd experienced up to that point. My brother and I were used to that sort of thing, so it didn't faze us at all. After convincing his friend to stay, we went back to playing with the Ouija board. It was answering questions again. I still thought somebody was moving the planchette. Then the intrigued friend asked whatever was answering to put out one of the candles. Within 5 seconds, one of the candles just burned out. There was no moving air. In the room, plus all the other candles were still burning without any motion indicating moving air. The spooked, skeptical friend screamed and started running for the door, screaming. The other friend followed him and my brother after that. I shouldn't have been, but I was laughing at the guy's reaction. Even though it was spooky, I never expected a big guy like him to scream like that. I went outside to find my brother's friends getting into his car to leave. I said we can't stop without saying goodbye on the Ouija board, just in case the superstition is true. My brother's friends were not willing to go back in the house though, so my brother and I went in to say goodbye. They left right after that without the Ouija board. I went back inside and blew out the remaining candles. Then I went upstairs to tell my friend and his girlfriend what just happened, since I knew they had to have heard the screaming. We sat upstairs talking until nighttime. Nothing happened until after midnight when the attic door began moving. Like I mentioned before, this was a usual occurrence in that house, so I was used to it. My friend's girlfriend was getting really scared by this though. She didn't believe things like this could happen, and here it was happening. It took a bit of convincing to get her to stay, but she did at that point. The attic door was shaking and making noise the whole time. After a bit of time, there was a loud noise that came from inside the attic that sounded like something being dragged across the floor. Then the sound of knocking from within. Once again, we had to talk his girlfriend into not leaving, even while the door was rattling and the knocking was still going on. After a few minutes, there was a loud thud that sounded like someone had dropped a book flat onto the wooden floor. That was it for his girlfriend. There was no talking her into staying now. She ran downstairs with us right behind her. She told my friend she would be back to pick him up in the morning, and she left. We went back inside and slept downstairs. When we got up, I just had to look in the attic to see where that loud noise came from. When I looked in, the first thing I noticed was the stack of encyclopedias was no longer straightened up. The one I picked up was right back on the floor. I can't say for sure if any of this was brought on by the Ouija board, but that was more occurrences in one day, witnessed by more people than there had ever been in that house before. Back in middle school over a decade ago, woof, I spent the night at my friend Kristen's house. To preface, I had just gotten a haircut earlier that day, so my ponytail couldn't even reach my armpit. I was sitting in her computer chair since my friend and sister were doing their makeup. I suck at makeup, so I listened to her MP3. I listened and shuffled through a few of her songs before I felt someone, or something, pull at the top of my ponytail. I thought it was my friend, so I turned around in the swivel chair, laughing and expecting to see my friend, only for there to be no one there. I quickly called her name, playing my encounter off, before she exclaimed, "My MP3 never plays that long." Coincidental, of course, but I think it's kind of weird I was playing full songs on her MP3 where there was an alleged energy around. She usually couldn't get it to play longer than 30 seconds. My sister didn't like to spend the night at places, especially a place my friend conveyed as haunted, but I didn't mind it so much and stayed. Probably an important time to mention the only man in the house was my friend's stepdad. The layout of the house was her parents' room was on the left side, opposite from the front door, in the same room as the dining room. Stopping there and looking immediately left, you'd be 3 to 5 feet from her parents' bedroom. The front door of the house and the dining room wasn't viewable from the living room because of the separating wall, a wall the height of the oven to separate the kitchen and dining room, so you could see just the edge of the right side of the dining room. Walking further, you're in the kitchen, with the aforementioned computer space, both visible from the living room. Turning right from there would be the living room. Day turns to night. I'm sitting on my friend's couch when we hear her storm door open and slam. It's around the holidays, so we even hear the metal Santa cling against the glass. We look at each other, probably sharing a nervous laughter, I smile and words, then both walk to the kitchen to peek towards the dining room front door. Nothing. So we sit down and continue to talk. Then her front door opened. We froze. The front door slammed. No more nervous smiling and laughing. "You want to go look?" I can't remember which one of us asked, but the other one answered no. We sat on the couch as we heard footsteps circle her dining table, out of view, and the heavy breathing of a man. We would have seen someone circling the table by the short oven wall, but no one. It could have been her stepdad, yes, but we never heard their bedroom door open, again out of view. And honestly, what 40-something-year-old man with a toddler disrupts their sleep to mess with their stepdaughter and her friend? We would have seen his shoulder torso anyways. Somehow, I didn't peel out of my skin in this moment. I'd like to say it was the last, but it wasn't. But luckily, nothing else ever happened. Still, over a decade later, I can't forget that experience. Her parents were so close to the front door, had a toddler in their bed, and none of them ever got up from bed to react, or even mention something about it the next day. My parents were on the complete opposite side of the front door in my childhood home, and would have definitely reacted to this. It was a late night when I was at home, probably around 2 a.m. I was chilling in my living room with one of my cats. At this time, I only had 2 cats. One of them was staying in my basement, and another one was sitting with me. After a while, I got up to check on my other cat who was sitting at the bottom of the stairs. This is when I heard a loud meow coming from down the hall. Confused, I went to check to see if my cat, who was sitting with me, had left. I went into the room, which was my brother's. I turned to check on her. She was sound asleep on the couch. I kind of froze, not sure what was going on, when I heard another meow from the same room. It was a long, drawn-out meow, which kind of worried me. It sounded hurt. As I looked at my 2 cats, I wondered what cat would possibly be in there. Eventually, I hesitantly walked into the room to see what was going on, but once I got in there, it was empty of all animals. I turned on all the lights and still didn't find anything that could make those sounds. I still to this day have no idea what cried for me that day. I was half asleep in bed after randomly waking up. I'm facing the ceiling and finally shut my eyes as I try to doze back off. If I was able to, I doubt I would have remembered that I was even up. That's how half asleep I was. So anyways, as I shut my eyes to try to fall asleep, the minute that I finally felt like I was drifting off, I heard a deep man's voice yell my name. He sounded scared, and in a panic I practically jumped, feeling the same way. My heart was racing. I've never heard that voice in my life. It was so chilling. It sounded so real. It's as if he was losing me. It was like a desperate yell. It was like when one character in a movie realizes that their significant other has been hurt. Sounds extreme, I know, but it was exactly that kind of yell. That's why I woke up in such a panic too, I assume. My thing is, I've had experiences before. I'm also pretty in tune with nature and the minuscule things. I'm not saying I'm a hippie, but I guess I'm softer to stuff like that. It's not abnormal, I just thought I'd mention it. Maybe it connects? I've seen things since I was like a toddler, and even now, it's not like a daily occurrence, but it happens. His voice was so unfamiliar to me that I couldn't have possibly made it up in my head if I tried to. Like when I picture voices in my head, it's hard. So, considering I was half asleep, I don't even know how I could have done it. It's not like I had nightmares before the voice called out or anything. Like maybe it was all a hallucination. I wonder if it was a message from someone. I will never know. Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.